Welcome back, my fellow Oregonians. Are you ready to step into the field of the unknown? Tonight we bring it to life. This is the RRN broadcasting from the heart of Oregon, Salem's capital. And to all of you listening across the state, from the major counties, all the way out to Rogue River and Gold Beach. Welcome back. I'm your host, Jacob Esguerra. Now, before we dive into tonight's investigation, I want to take a moment to bring you up to speed on something many of you have been asking about, our clothing line. Yeah, we're getting there. We really are. We're currently working with 511 Tactical materials, and we're aiming to offer two fabric options, cotton and a cotton polyester blend. So you'll have a choice between comfort and durability. Now, our goal, as always, has been to make this affordable for everyone. But at the same time, we don't want to sacrifice quality. I truly do not. So we're working through that balance right now. I'm trying to find common ground. To start, we'll be releasing shirts featuring both the Ropen Radio Network logo and our new logo as well. So here's the plan. In June, we'll be running a poll to get your feedback. What styles you like, what materials you would prefer, and whether you'd be willing to pay a bit more for a higher quality gear. All right? So those options will be available to you. Then in July, we'll do a test run just to see how many of you are interested, which may not be too many. If the response is strong, we'll continue, and we'll continue expanding from there. And if not, we may scale things back and offer a more basic, cost-friendly cotton option. Either way, though, this is something we want to build with. We want to build this with you, not just for you. All right? Now that that's out of the way, I've been working on that one for a while now, and I'm glad we're finally coming to a close on that one. Finally, we're going to have that pushed out there for you to be able to purchase. I think that's going to be kind of interesting because, some people may not want to sacrifice quality and would be willing to pay the extra dime for something more durable or nicer looking. I agree. I do not like cotton, but it may be the only option we go with. It may be something we're just going to have to accept. So we'll see what happens. Let's get into it. The first subject I want to talk about is a new discovery involving a feline. Now, this is not a bobcat. This is not a panther. This is not a big cat. This is the Colocolo Cat, a discovery or misidentification. We shall find out. Now, if you're thinking this is a big cat, no, it's not. We're talking more like probably the size of your domesticated cat. But still, it's interesting because this is the field of the hidden animal, is it not? So when discoveries like this come across our desk, we need to bring it to the public. Before I move forward, it's important that we approach this subject with clear and grounded perspectives, all right? Because what we're dealing with here is not a newly discovered species, but rather a renewed interest, a very real and often misunderstood animal, which can be the everyday animal. The so-called Colocolo Cat is not a cryptid in the traditional sense. It is widely recognized in zoology as part of the Leopardus colocolo complex, a group of small wildcats native to South America. So not really necessarily native to the United States. Now let's break this down carefully, though, all right? The animal in question has been reported and photographed in regions of central and southern Chile, particularly in areas where rural landscapes meet dense brush and fragmented forest. However, here's where things become unclear. There is no single verified new discovery event tied to one individual, one photograph, or one scientific announcement confirming a newly identified species in Chile under the name Colocolo Cat. Instead, what we're seeing is a resurgence of interest driven by photographs, social media circulation, and local reports, many of which are being interpreted as something new or unknown. Okay? Now, scientifically speaking, the Colocolo or pampas cat has undergone recent taxonomic revision. Let me rephrase that. Taxonomic revision. For years, it was grouped under a single species, Leopardus colocola, not to be mistaken with a drink. But more recent genetic studies have suggested that what we once thought was one species may actually be multiple distinct species within a broader complex. This includes Leopardus colocolo, narrowed classification, Leopardus bahiras, Leopardus baractus. So when some people say new discovery, they may actually be reacting to updated classifications, rare sightings, or unusual coloration and morphology. Not necessarily a brand new animal, okay? But let's talk about the appearance. The Colocolo type cats are small to medium size, roughly the size of a large domesticated cat. Whether or not it's the size of a Bengal cat, that could vary. They are thick-bodied, with relatively short legs, dense fur, often gray, brown, or yellowish in color. The markings can be very significantly stripes, blotches, or almost uniform coats. And yes, it does share some characteristics of the Bengal cat. This variation is important because it often leads observers to believe they're seeing something unusual or even unidentified. Now, behavior and habitat, these cats are primarily solitary, nocturnal or crepuscular, and they're found in grasslands, shrublands, forest edges, and even mountainous terrains. They're incredibly elusive, as a cat should be, right? Which means, even though they are real, they are rarely seen clearly. The word clearly is important. So the question becomes, is this new Colocolo cat discovery legitimate? The answer is nuanced, really. I would say, if I had to run a list here, 3 questions. Yes, check that. The animal itself is real. Second, yes, the sightings in Chile are legitimate. And I would say no. There is currently no confirmed scientific announcement of a new species discovery tied to a recent photograph or of an individual who took that photograph. Okay, so what is happening? In a collision between genuine wildlife, scientific classification, and public interpretation, now this species thrives. Does it thrive? Yes, but with conditions, though, okay? The Colocolo and related species face habitat fragmentation, agricultural expansion, human encroachment, but however, they are also adaptable, silent, and capable of surviving in mixed environments. Now, as for where we can find them today, these cats are distributed across Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. Let's see here, even Paraguay, and from what I'm seeing here, parts of Brazil. do you say that? Brazil? Brazil? Yeah. Could we see one in the wild? That's rare. Very rare, actually. And capturing a clear image, even rarer. So what are we really looking at here? Not a monster, no, not by any means. Not a myth, but something just fascinating. A real animal living on the edge of visibility, misunderstood and reclassified. Maybe even rediscovered over and over again. And that raises a bigger question. When does an animal become unknown again? So let's keep that in mind, right? Yeah. So if you're seeing pictures surface online, that's extremely hard to do. But apparently some people are photographing these animals, these felines. So they're being seen. We know they're out there. No doubt about it. This is not something that's extremely rare. Not anymore. But it is being cited. And because of that, it is worthy of the discussion. And if you got a clear image of this thing, fantastic. And that's why that's starting to surface online. You might see that pop up on feeds, Instagram maybe, TikTok, maybe even Facebook. But be careful, though, because things can be easily fabricated, can't they? With this day and age of technology and AI creations, we have to be very mindful of what comes through the pipeline. So question everything. Nothing wrong with that. But hold tight to the truth. I love it. Let's move forward, shall we? This is a great one. I need to take the time and talk about this. This is important. Dear to my heart, because it's one of the strangest investigations I ever conducted in 2021, towards the end of 2021. I call this the critical analysis of the Enfield Monster presentation. Now, there are investigators and there are amateurs in this field. There are those who truly want to know and those who just don't really care because it makes for a good story or it makes for good comedic relief. After listening to me for a long time now, well, maybe not as long as others, you know that I take everything seriously. Why do I do that? Well, it's very simple. There are people involved. There are stories involved. Many have come across so much information regarding accounts. And to them, everything seems very genuine. People seem genuine. But that's where you have investigative skills. We find out just how sincere people can be. Don't get me wrong. The Enfield case has a lot of loopholes that need to be closed. There are gaps in the stories. And as I was visiting there, back in 2021, it was August of 21. I love the area. Love the community. But there is a sense that something is terribly wrong. There is definitely a sense of mystery. And the best time to visit this particular area, I believe, is in the summer months. Because that's when you see the foliage. It only adds more to this mystery. I want to turn to a subject that requires not only attention, but discipline. A recent video by Groovy Gavin titled "The Three-Legged Creature That Terrorized This Small Town, Enfield Monster." This one has gained significant traction online, accumulating about 2.9 million views. That's amazing. So who would ever argue against the views, right? And while popularity may suggest impact, it does not necessarily reflect accuracy, methodology, or respect for source material. This is why I'm bringing this up. Let us begin with a fundamental issue, the approach. One of the most persistent problems in modern cryptid media is the increasing number of individuals entering the field without training, without discipline, and without a clear understanding of investigative responsibility. These are not investigators. They are content creators. And there is a difference. Within the first several minutes of this presentation, it becomes evident that the tone leans heavily toward comedy and entertainment, rather than measured analysis. Now, to be clear, there's nothing inherently wrong with entertainment, but when dealing with historical cases involving real witnesses, real locations, and claims that have persisted for decades, tone matters. Because the Enfield case, regardless of where one stands on its validity, is not merely a story. It is a body of testimony. There were multiple witnesses. There were repeated sightings. And in some cases, those experiences left lasting impressions on the individuals involved. In 2022, I conducted my own investigation into this case. So 1 in 21, 1 in 2022. Let me rephrase that. But this case wasn't from a distance, though. But on location. Not many can say that. On ground zero. Not many can say that. In the right spot. Not many can say that. This is what separates myself from the crowd. I stood at ground zero, I examined the terrain, I documented the environment, and I approached the material with one guiding principle: respect the source before you attempt to interpret it. This is where the presentation in question begins to fail, folks. The source material is not treated with care. It is at times dismissed, ridiculed, and reduced to a spectacle and a marsupial. And rather than being examined, it was not. Now let's consider something critical. Despite the icon, well, that is the Enfield Monster. There are inconsistencies in the Enfield case, though, as I mentioned. There are many, yes. There also exists continuity. Eyewitnesses, both historical and more recent, have described a creature exhibiting unusual locomotion. In fact, one of my own witnesses who came forward in 2022 reported observing a creature crossing in front of his vehicle. His description was specific. A body supported in motion with what appeared to be 3 legs, one of which extended upward behind the creature as it moved. Now, this is not proof, but it is data. Data is important. And data, when treated properly, deserves analysis, not dismissal. But now we arrive at another significant issue. Field conduct. Field conduct. From what is presented in the video, there appears to have been an attempt to engage with individuals connected to this case, possibly even members of the McDaniel family, which I believe was present. However, the interaction seems to have been handled in a manner that only can be described as unprofessional. And the result? They were dismissed, sent away, turned away, shut down. This shouldn't be surprising at all. Communities like Enfield are not tourist attractions, not by any means. They are lived in environments with history, memory, and in some cases, sensitivity surrounding these people. If you wish to speak with individuals in these areas, you do not arrive for a few hours with a camera. You do not extract and leave. You invest time. You build rapport. You listen. Only then do people begin to open up. This is a standard investigative practice. And it is not what was followed. Now perhaps the most glaring issue. Location accuracy. The video does not appear to have been filmed at the correct site. Not by any means. Let me reprise this, okay? And let me be precise on the location. I have stood at the location where the original event actually occurred. I know where Greg Garrett's residence once stood. It still stands today. I have filmed on that ground. The original structure is no longer present for the McDaniel home because it was destroyed. Parts of it were. Some remnants remained. Brent Walters resided on the property. But shortly after I left Enfield, his property burnt to the ground. And yet, what is shown in the video does not align with that location. This is not a minor oversight. To me, this is a fundamental failure of basic research. And finally, there is the matter of professional courtesy and source usage. There was prior communication. Information was shared. Context was offered with a simple request for acknowledgement. That acknowledgement was not given. But now to be clear, though, okay, this is not about credit for its own sake. No, the material still leads viewers back to its origin. But it does not reinforce a broader concern. The lack of care handling the sources. And that is the central issue here. Not disagreement. Not interpretation, but care. Because this field, whether one believes in these phenomena or not, requires discipline, folks. It requires patience. And above all, it requires respect. Anyone can be curious. Anyone can pick up a camera, but not everyone is prepared to investigate responsibly. And that is why this work, this kind of work, must be handled by those who understand its weight. Because when you remove care from the process, you don't just lose accuracy, you lose credibility. And once credibility is lost, everything else follows. Yes. So that's my beef with this video. You can check it out on YouTube, about 17 minutes long, maybe a little bit over. I don't remember the name of the individual who reached out to us via email. I told him specifically that, yes, we do have information on this case. I'd love to share it with you. All I ask is just for a shout out. Then it went silent. And that's the way it goes sometimes. That's not what bothers me. It does nothing about the video as far as its views bother me. Because obviously this is a person online who has done an amazing job of his content. He's a content creator, not an investigator. That's the difference. For me, I handle all this with care. Source material is important, needs to be treated with respect. This is why McDaniel sent them away. Give me a break. You do not approach people like this. Learn something about professionalism and learn it well. Let's take our first break. When we come back, we got more to talk about, especially continuing the conversation with Brian Price. This one continues. Former Navy SEAL, Navajo Windtalker, actor and producer. What does he know about the Thunderbirds of Arizona? Are they just avians? You are listening to the Ropen Network. Stay tuned.
We never know when life will test us, when danger will round the corner, when we will be called upon to act with everything on the line. But being prepared gives us the confidence to excel when our whole world hangs in the balance. 511 Tactical. Always be ready.
Your exclusive home for cryptozoological talk, the RRN, Salem, Oregon. Let's seek the truth.
Hi, I'm Crystal Jordan of the Ropen Radio Network. The RRN is a proud sponsor of the Wildlife Safari, which began as the vision and dream of one man, Frank Hart. It was Hart's goal to create a facility in the Pacific Northwest that would work to save rare and endangered species from all around the world. Wildlife Safari boasts one of the top cheetah breeding research centers on Earth. It is the #1 cheetah breeding facility outside of Africa and #2 on the planet. Take a trip past the incredibly inspiring African elephants. Dare yourself to end your journey with a trip through a carnivore loop featuring Wildlife Safari's top cheetah breeding grounds and ferocious Sumatran tigers. So the next time you plan your vacation, be sure to stop at the Wildlife Safari located in beautiful Southern Oregon. You are closer to Africa than you think.
So when you face skepticism, Brian, or opposition, what keeps your faith strong?
They say keep the faith strong. Here's a good thing for the audience. A lot of people don't know how God actually works. You got to look at God the Father like he's a CEO. He is everywhere at all times, and he watches every single thing everyone does in every dimension, whether it be demonic, otherworldly, alien, human, it doesn't matter. He's everywhere, and he watches everything, and he keeps track on a ledger of every single thing that happens. And so I follow him, and there's been times I haven't. I'm not perfect. But I know that he is keeping the ledger, and he is just, and that he is true, and that he loves you in an amount and a way that no one could ever understand, and he will pay you back with that ledger. He's keeping track of everything, whether you see that or believe it or not. It's hard for me to believe this sometimes. Sometimes I get frustrated about stuff, and I have to be like, dude, Lord, can you please take this frustration away from me? I'm mad because this person betrayed me, and it hurt my feelings, and I'm really upset. And like, I want to take revenge, but I know this wrong, so I'm going to give this to you. Come fill this carnal anger space in and heal this so I don't get triggered by this again. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, no problem. I got the ledger. I'll pay you back. And so it's just like, that's what keeps my faith strong. It's like, I know I'm covered. Like there's a hedge of protection around me. I've had like covens come after me. It's like they tried to attack me and the match reverberated and shot back to them. And the guy had like a seizure and I didn't even touch him or nothing. It's like, yeah, we were trying to play games with me. I had one witch who tried to like get me with like a love potion and some food. And I didn't know that at the time. And I ate the food and it like fired back to her. And like, she had to go to like the psych ward. And it's like, why? It's like, I didn't even do anything. I just ate the food and she had a breakdown like 2 days later. And I'm like, oh, that's the magic from the food. God's protecting me.
Yeah.
So so it's like, I know I'm protected. I know there's a hedge of protection around me. And I know that God keeps track of everything. And he takes care of his children, whether people see that or not.
Yes, he does. Amen to that.
Amen.
Like I said, folks, so we're on par with a lot of things. And I don't think I've asked this question, though. Not that it matters, okay? But I'm just always curious about what denomination people come from. For me, for me in life, I'm Baptist. Okay, so I was raised in the Baptist church. So I've had friends who are Pentecostals. I have friends who are Methodist, Presbyterian, you name it. So, Brian, what's your denomination if you affiliate with a denomination?
Yeah, I was raised Baptist, and my father went to, it's now called Cairn University, but it was called Philadelphia College of the Bible, and he has a biblical studies certificate. And so I was raised Baptist through that. And now I'm non-denominational. I have a wonderful relationship with God, and We talk all the time. He's my best friend. He's always got my back. He tells me the truth, even the hard truth when I don't want to hear it, because he wants me to be the best version of myself. He's also a father. He wants what's best for me. He takes care of me. He guards me from things around me, but he also allows me to be in situations that will allow me to grow while he's protecting me.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, he's my commander. It's like, hey, look, I know what the evil is. I know what the good is. I'm going to listen to Commander Jesus before I listen to anybody else. And so I have an intimate relationship with God, and I'm really close to him. And there was a time when I hated him. At this point, I didn't even acknowledge him, and I'm asking the enemy for favors rather than going to him. So I'm not trying to sit here and tell anybody what they should or shouldn't do, or how they should or shouldn't feel about any sort of God or deity or whatever they worship. I just worship Jesus, and I know that he's the truth and all the reality, and every single thing in this world and this false reality that we've been lied to, that we live in, about, it all points back to him.
Yes.
You just got to do the deep dive. Go down the rabbit hole. Every rabbit hole leads to the same den, and then inside that den is Jesus.
Yeah.
Every single one. All of them. All the conspiracy theories, everything. It all leads back to him, period. It's him. I've spent 10 years doing this, and I was also loaned out to the CIA, and I specialize in psychological operations as well. So I'm actually like a quote trained spy, basically. And so I really know how to like track things down and detective work things to the point where it's just like, look, this is the truth. And I'm not trying to convince you. I don't have the power to convince you or anybody. I can just tell you the truth, and it's your job to wrestle with that and figure it out for yourself. And whatever way you go, that's on you. No judgment again.
Yeah.
I keep saying no judgment because you walk into a church sometimes and you get judged out the door, and then people get church hurt, and it pushes people further away from God.
True.
But it's not anyone's job to judge, including a person of the clergy or any sort of church member. It's your job to show them to love the Lord.
Yeah, and there's obviously a difference between discerning and judging. Okay, we're discern and test the spirits. If somebody's, for instance, we got a lot of bad preachers out there who are all about making money. That we need to discern that. Mm-hmm. Okay, not necessarily that we're judging. We're discerning right from wrong. That's the most important thing. And when I come back to the CIA here for a moment here, now working with the CIA, I've been told that they're not welcoming of those who are Christian. That if you are a believer, that would make it harder for you to work with them. But were you a believer at the time working with the CIA?
Yeah. So this is the thing. When you get involved with Tier 1 units and you're at a SEAL team or you're at Delta Force, wherever you're at, like there's a lot of commingling. And so most special forces guys have some sort of connection to FBI, CIA type stuff, because the counterterrorism team of the FBI doesn't just do national, but it also does international threats as well. And those guys are really well trained as well. And so a lot of those things kind of all come together. And so it wasn't so much like I was, quote, in the CIA, because I never, ever was. But I was trained in spycraft while I was in the Navy from people by the agency. And every single SEAL is, and every single Green Beret is. So it's not like I was selected or pulled out. It was just part of the pipeline, and they give you some spy training. And because of my high scores on the military entrance exam and my understanding of technology and communications and things like that, they said, hey, this guy's smart. Let's teach him a few languages. He's got brown skin. He can grow a beard. And I did a few wild things over there with them, but I was never in the CIA. I was never associated with them on paper. It was just, I was a SEAL and we all kind of commingle and work together. But they realized that I have a unique look and I had the ability to learn languages, and they kind of used me around a few different areas. So as far as like knowing who they do and don't like to hire, I don't know, because I never worked there specifically. That was just sort of working alongside them and trained by the same system.
Okay.
Because it's all kind of intermingled when you're at that level of operations.
Thank you for that clarification. I had wondered. So now we get into it. Something the audience is waiting for. Encounters with the unknown. It's things that potentially go bump in the night, but things that fly. And for many years, we've been devoted to one type of creature here, Brian, and that's the pterosaur phenomena. Most people, the word pterosaur goes right over their head. What's that? Well, it's actually pterodactyl. Though it's not anatomically correct, not the right word we use here, pterosaurians would be the proper word. So if you can imagine dragon, okay, because that's what they were called way before these words were introduced to the general public in the mid-1800s. The proper word is pterosaur, but affiliated with dragons in the ancient world. And I say, how does that fit? Well, it's quite obvious. It's also mentioned in Scripture. These creatures are a part of Scripture. If you can believe it or not, they're there. They're mentioned. They're known as the fiery flying serpent. However, the NIV and NAS removed some of these words because they didn't understand what that meant. We had to set them straight on that. But whether or not we can get them to be all on board, that's another story here. So, Brian, I've heard about Thunderbirds and pterosaurs all my life, like creatures on your reservation. How do you interpret these beings? Do you believe they are remnants of God's ancient creation or something spiritual? Beings that exist between worlds, maybe, perhaps? Shed some light for us a little bit. What you personally think?
Yeah, thank you. I personally think that they're remnants of God's creation. There's a lot of different stories from my reservation. So I come from the Navajo reservation, and that's the biggest reservation in the United States. It's about the size of West Virginia. We have our own government, judicial, legislative, executive branch, our own president, our own police force, all that stuff. So it's basically like its own country within the United States borders, as big as West Virginia. And there's a lot of things on a reservation that are very ancient, like the Grand Canyon is very ancient.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff out there, but I think that they're left over from God's creation. I do think that, the word dinosaur was introduced a couple hundred years ago, but before that it was dragon.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's paintings from the Renaissance times of people riding like long-necked dinosaurs into battle. And there's lots of declassified files at the Smithsonian. You can go online and read all this stuff about, quote, dragons or big things swooping down and, attacking a train in 1890 in the West. And so, like, these things have always been here. And I think that part of it's spiritual, but I do think that they are physically created either by God or remnants of, tampering with from other deities.
We also had dominance or dominion over them. So we knew how to combat these creatures if we were to come into their lands. And a great example, I don't know if you've heard about this or not, but when the Israelites had to leave Egypt, they had to do such practices when they were passing through these lands. Because Egypt actually, if you look back at the archaeological digs, it is riddled with pterosaur fossils all over Egypt and outside of Egypt.
Yeah.
And one of the most popular birds that Egyptians had to combat flying reptiles was the ibis birds. Because these birds actually can hit a reptile at the weak spot and bring it down immediately. Now, I'm not saying that the Egyptians were...
It's kind of like a dolphin with a shark.
Yeah.
The gills.
Exactly how a dolphin acts. And dolphins are very intelligent. There's so many avian types that are extremely intelligent, and they know what to do to fight off a predator. In this case, they knew the weak spot of any reptile that was out there. I'm not saying that we're dealing with large flying pterosaurians in Egypt, more like probably the 6-foot, 10-foot wingspans, maybe. Nuisance. You go to other parts like Kenya, Africa, they say, yeah, these things are still out here, and they're a pain in the butt. They're a nuisance, and they're known as the Kangamato or other types of names.
Okay.
So if you think about what the Israelites had to go through, they had to pass through the land, and they would carry the ibis birds in these baskets over their head. The ibis birds would be there to protect the dive bombing. And a lot of people say, well, no, they were attacked by serpents.
Hear about that. That's pretty cool.
It's like, well, no, they actually were. If you do the extensive study and research on the serpent, plural, versus reptile. Serpent means reptile. It doesn't refer to snake. That's just a misconception. It refers to reptile. And since the scriptures mention fiery flying serpent, we're dealing with something that dive bombs. We're dealing with something that illuminates light at night. It has bioluminescence. This is not unheard of. There are a lot of organisms on this planet that can and do have this function. Okay. So a little bit of feedback there. A lot of people don't realize this, but the Israelites had to do something for strategy to avoid the dangers of these lands and the reptiles that inhabit the lands. So
yeah, I didn't know that. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard about the like you're saying, the bioluminescence on our reservation. We call them Thunderbirds, but there's like two different types. One is petrosaur, correct? Is what we're talking about. We see those sometimes. I personally never see one. But then there's another one that has wing, like feathers, and those feathers have like a bioluminescent rainbow kind of like tint to them. And they're like huge condors, basically. I mean, the San Diego safari place down here in California, they got a California condor like exhibit, and those things wingspans are like 15 feet, you know. So we've heard of on my reservation, we've heard of both types of Thunderbirds. Um, so yeah,
Okay.
interesting.
This is where I've got to ask that question then. When we bring up
Yeah.
Thunderbirds, so we've talked about this in the past with the famous cryptozoologist Ken Gerhardt, and he's done a lot of work with Thunderbird accounts. So it comes to my attention that some of the tribal nations are affiliated they actually compiled them in both of these type of creatures together, because you see them depicted on totems where they have a head crest.
Yeah.
Avian types just don't have head crests unless they're feathers. We haven't found anything that depicts a strong bone other than a flying reptile. So am I wrong here, Brian? Is it true that some of these nations actually depict the pterosaur family as a thunderbird as well? Is this correct from what you know?
Yeah, from what I know on my reservation, Thunderbird is like an interchangeable a term because, like I said, we've heard about the petrosaurs on my reservation. There was a picture of one 5 or 6 years ago, and it was kind of being passed around the reservation, like, "Oh my gosh, there's a Thunderbird! They're back! They're back!" And it was a pterodactyl. It was a petrosaur. And I don't know where the photo went. This was like a while ago. Um, but then I've also heard of like, hey, like the Thunderbirds, like don't go near Devil's Butte or don't go near this butte or this canyon because they'll swoop up and eat children. And they're like big, huge winged condor things, but they're both called Thunderbirds interchangeably where I'm from.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know if all the nations are on par with this, but I think a good amount of them.
Yeah, all of us have like kind of different beliefs and stuff. Like I know, like where we're at, they're like, "Hey, don't mess with the Thunderbirds. Like don't go over there." But then I know some tribes in British Columbia, and they think a Thunderbird is like this is like bravery and like it's there to protect you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's like the antithesis of what we're thinking they are. So, like I said, you're growing up on the reservation, going to, I did the powwow circuit when I was younger. So I got to really, expand my horizons on meeting new tribes and meeting other nations and things like that from a First Nations perspective. And we all kind of talk about this, and it's supposed to be hush hush, and you're eating your fried bread at the powwow, but everyone's kind of talking and just, well, what's going on? I heard this, I heard that. So I've heard lots of things, but like I said, I've never personally seen a Thunderbird.
Okay.
But my grandmother, she died in like 2016, 2017, and she was like triple digits. She was over 100. They actually lost her birth certificate, but it was passed down. So she was born in like 1910s. And there was stories of her saying when she was little, like, yeah, they would have to stay away because like they would literally steal the children away.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a big, huge bird. But then again, there was another account like 5 or 6 years ago where they had a picture of it, and it was a petrosaur. It wasn't a bird with feathers. So grandma saw the feathered bird, Thunderbird, and then this other guy in the picture had a petrosaur. So from my understanding, they're kind of interchangeable. But again, I've never personally seen one, but there's legends everywhere. And, there's like, the underground cities in the Grand Canyon and things like that. And there's all these different understandings and ideas. But again, there's so much misinformation flying around. There's so much, they got a hold of the history books, and then they rewrote a history and then taught that, versus what actually happened. So it's hard for me to decipher, which is, why I'm happy talking to the expert. Thanks for having me.
Well, no, I mean, I love getting an understanding from someone who is part of the nations. Okay, because maybe you hear more than we do. Now, I've talked to the nations out in Washington State. It's interesting. Here in Oregon, we just don't
Yeah,
have many accounts of pterosaurs. Maybe along the Columbia River Gorge, but it's mostly going to be our neighboring state, which is Washington. And, of course, all the other ones, mid-states, Texas, Florida, Arkansas, North Carolina, you name it. It's just Oregon, not really the environment for them unless you head further north. And so the fact that you mentioned family members, too, that have some familiarity with these things. Let me ask you this question then, Brian. Do you happen to know if these creatures appear connected to certain landscapes, weather patterns, or maybe sacred Navajo places?
Oh yeah, for us, they're saying like stay away from, like, be careful when you're around the canyons.
Okay.
Because like there's like ancient cities and stuff down there in the canyons. The U.S. government like has security guards and stuff on all the canyons on the reservation out there, including the Grand Canyon, especially the Grand Canyon. And you're not allowed to go to certain areas, and it's like because there's an underground city down there. And so it's like, well, where are these things coming from? They're not just flying around the world. Where are they at? Are they going down and like roosting in this cave in this underground city? Why are these people standing there with guns and telling you to turn around? And we're Native American. I'm Navajo. That's like our ancestral land. We've been here 1,000 years. Like you're telling us we can't even go explore our own land on our own reservation, and we're a sovereign nation, but the U.S. government has people with guns standing there. So they could be roosting possibly like in this cave system in this ancient underground city that used to be there. You know, they're also saying don't go around the buttes because it's like I heard this when I was younger. My grandfather, his name is George. He died. We went to his funeral, and they had to hold the funeral at a certain time of day and clear everyone out because the funeral was near his ancestral home, which was near this really big butte. And this butte had a legend of like Thunderbirds would roost up there. And when my grandma was little, the kids would be playing and the Thunderbird would swoop down, take him up, and they would take him up to its nest, you know, 500 meters up on top of this butte, and it would eat the kids.
Yeah.
And so I mean, around buttes, around canyons, they're like, hey, just be careful about that kind of stuff. And so we were always told to just watch out if we're going to play around those areas, like we need to be careful and we need to keep an eye out because the birds will come and snatch you.
So George is adamant about this. This was one just not a story to him. This was actual fact. The danger.
Yeah. He was like, hey, don't do that. Like they'll swoop people. They ate people before. But, you know, like I said, my grandparents were like 100 years old. And so this is like 1915, 1925, 1930. I mean, it was basically still the Wild West, you know, if in a small sense of the word. And yeah, they were saying like, don't do that. And so there's all these legends out there. It's like, hey, if you're going to go around buttes, like don't even go near it. Like, and it's like, hey, if there's a butte over here, don't go near that butte. And there's like certain ones on the reservation that everyone knows, like stay away from that. If you go over there, like you're playing with something that you don't understand, and it could hurt you.
Brian, did he say if they ever killed one or trapped one?
He never told me that he killed one or trapped one.
Okay.
Yeah. And he said, I do remember a legend of someone trying to climb up the butte, like a medicine man or something, a while back, like 50 years ago. And he tried to climb up there and get some of the eggs or something. Or he tried to climb up there and get feathers or whatever he was trying to do.
Okay.
And they came by and they swooped him and he fell into his death. And so there's all these legends of things like that, and eagle feathers, and there's a lot of like ceremonial type things that is used in like native cultures for, you know, like quote magical things.
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, if you can get some Thunderbird feathers, like you have the most magic. If you can, you know, if you can like get one of the eggs, then you can, you know, eat the essence in a seance with some peyote and, you know, doing a thing. And so there's all these kinds of legends, but I've never gotten involved with it at that level.
Yeah, I can see why too. Yeah. I will say this though, it does add up to what we are discovering, the high plains, the buttes. Okay. Mm-hmm. If we're dealing with a flying reptile, they need the wind currents to ride on. They need the high grounds for soaring, for diving down. They're not much of anything as far as land dwellers because they can easily be killed. They can easily be picked off by a predator. Those wings are fragile. it's interesting when you look at birds, when you find skeletons or fossils of birds, you're finding very fragile looking structures. And the same thing applies to the pterosaur phenomena. They are very fragile. This is why we don't have a ton of complete skeletons of them, because it's hard to obtain them, except for one particular case, which was Dracula, found in, I think, Transylvania, was one of the largest pterosaur fossils that was found. And their bones depict something far different from the normal avian birds, which tells me there's chambers or resins that these things are capable of more so than anything else. And when I was talking to you, we touched on the bioluminescence capability of emission of light. And it's interesting, Brian, because they use different kinds of colors in their, way of communication. And I thought that was very odd until I finally saw this for myself. Now, my comrades have been to PNG, Papua New Guinea, and they've seen them in the night sky. Bill Gibbons, famous explorer.
Yeah, I totally believe it. I'm telling you, these things are out there.
Yeah. And then, of course, the whole nation recorded the Indava, the glowing lights, because they had the big light and the smaller light, which represents chest illumination and tail illumination. And Josh Gates, early 2000s, they filmed the Ropen light as well. So we do have some solid evidence of their behavior. When I saw that for myself, Brian, I thought, well, I'm used to the supernatural for 6 years parapsychology work. I thought these are just spirits. And likely that is what it could have been until something happened. So just October 6th of 2024, the night sky above Salem, Oregon. I'm constantly looking up, as I tell all my listeners, to keep your eyes on the sky. You never know what you're going to see. And I've seen some pretty strange things, objects that are moving way too fast to be organic. In this case, I finally saw something that corresponded with Dave Wetzel and Garth Gesselman have been saying and speaking about all these years. And when you see it, it crossed the path here like this, just directly ahead, put on the brakes, and was gone. And when it was gone, it left the plasma trail behind it. And they had said it almost is reminiscent of the phoenix. The glow is so bright that it actually leaves that trail right behind it.
Yeah.
And what was interesting, too, is that there was a plane above. So when this guy is traveling, he's moving at a speed that's natural, which is organic. When he saw the plane, he stopped, put on the brakes, and just burnt out, leaving that trail behind him. When I saw that, I kept dismissing, saying, no, I'm not that lucky. It doesn't happen to me like this. But it did. And I still can't erase what I saw. What I saw was absolutely 100% real and lined up with the testimonies of what these guys have been saying. And I didn't believe them at first until you see it for yourself. And I knew it.
Yeah. So you're saying they may be interdimensional, or they have the ability to kind of slip through modern space?
I believe, this is a natural characteristic of this creature. They truly can light up, which is why they're referred to as dragons. Or in the book of Isaiah, the fiery flying serpent.
Yeah. Wow.
This is a characteristic that they use to communicate or to lure their prey. The green color tends to be more playful.
They use that like lure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. I was excited. Yeah.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So there are other characteristics that I'm finding that could be associated with them too. If you look at the poisonous snakes we have in this world, there's plenty of them. What if these guys bite you? Are they poisonous as well? If they are a reptile and they come in various diversive forms, we've only found 150 to 250 species of pterosaurs, which is still a lot.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah. However, how many of these guys are poisonous or venomous? If they bite you,
well, I know it's a good question. I think that's open. Yeah, that's open for discussion for sure. Because I remember the Komodo dragon. I remember when I was a kid, I was watching Jeff Corwin, or I was watching Steve Irwin, and they would do this is the Komodo dragon. And they were like, his bacteria in his mouth and his drool is like so venomous that when he bites something, it dies. And then like 5 years ago, they were like, oh no, the Komodo dragon actually has venom sacs and it's venomous and it bites you and injects venom.
Yeah.
So it's not just it's got a dirty mouth and it bites and you get an infection. It like actually has like potent venom, and that's how it takes things down. And I was like, man, they were teaching that it was just nasty spit for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then 5-10 years ago, they're like, oh no, it's venomous like a snake. And so if this is a petrol store, then that makes total sense that it would probably have venom sacs as well.
I like that you brought that up. I've actually talked to people about this before who were reptile experts, and they're like, no, they're not. I'm like, yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. You got to go back and study, man.
Yeah.
All right, we need to take our second break. My VP says I need to do a better job of squeezing them in. I'm on it, though. We are Salem, Oregon's first cryptozoological network, and you are listening to the Ropen Network. Stay tuned.
Want to see some dinosaurs?
Unbelievable.
Want to see Eden? Come on, it's almost time for the show. This is the Creation Museum.
Prepare to believe.
The LA Times calls the Creation Museum a 60,000 square foot menace to 21st century scientific advancement. Vanity Fair calls it the biggest collection of kitsch in God's entire world. Architectural Record says it's more frightening than Disney's Haunted Mansion.
There are nearly 200 natural history museums across America that teach evolution. So why is the media so hateful to our museum that teaches creation from a biblical perspective? Think for yourself and prepare to believe.
I can confirm this too now. But yeah, there's...
Well, I just watched a lot of Animal Planet because I like animals and stuff, you know?
Well, it later came into fruition that, hey, look, this is actual fact now. But this was years back. I kept wondering about these things. If we're dealing with flying reptiles, that only makes them even more dangerous in the sky. Because not only are they nocturnal and they come out early AM hours and late hours of the evening, they could come out whenever they wanted to. But this just even makes it more of a threat and far more dangerous to think what else they can do. As a matter of fact, there is some reports of a man losing his arm to one of these things. Oh, wow. They said it was another wild animal attack. They dismissed it, but yet here's this poor guy without an arm. He's like, I've been through a couple of tours in Vietnam, and I was never prepared for something like this. You know, you're being shot at. You're used to being in combat.
Yeah, Vietnam was rough, man.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys, jeez.
Mm-hmm.
That was nuts. Yeah, there's like reports of guys seeing things in Vietnam, the jungles and stuff too, like other cryptid creatures. Yeah, so it's this, man, I'm telling you, the audience, these things are everywhere. They're real. Like the veil is being lifted. You know, there's everyone will find out in the next it'll come out.
Oh, yeah. So, you know what? That brings me up to this next question then. So, some would say, Brian, that they are tied to the hollow earth or interdimensional spaces. Does your experiences align with that perspective?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, there is on the Grand Canyon, there is like an ancient underground city down there. Like I said, this is all public knowledge. You just got to look at the files. Most of this stuff's declassified by the CIA. You go on the government website, you can find all this stuff. It's just it takes time to cross-reference and pattern and find truths, and But the underground city, apparently, there was like tens of thousands of people that lived in that underground city, in the Grand Canyon, and so like where does the underground city lead to? And like I've heard of things like Hollow Earth and how they potentially have like an artificial sun down there. I mean, why do you think they every single country on the planet agreed that no one's allowed to go to Antarctica? It's like you can't just take a civilian ship down there or you fly down there. Like it's illegal. Like you can't do it. And every country has agreed. Like what if this country is not part of the UN? They still agreed. It's like what are they hiding down there?
Yeah.
And so I've heard a lot of things about Hollow Earth and inner Earth. And like I said, it's like stay away from the canyons, guys, because they could potentially be roosting in the caves down there. I'm like, where do these caves lead to?
Yeah.
Especially being, in the special forces realm where I'm at, and like commingling with the agency and commingling with SAS and all these other agencies across the planet and doing the things that we were doing during the war, you get like a lot of sensitive compartmentalized information for the missions that you do. So they say, hey, you're going to go in and do this. Just be careful about this. And then you hear like, wait, what the heck's Tartaria? What? We're looking for the what? Okay. And so you hear all these different things and but you only get like the compartmentalized idea and version that you need to do the mission.
Mm.
And so you have enough of those guys kind of coming together like, wait a second, there's a lot of things that everyone's saying they see the same thing. And it's not like, just crazy people. It's like you have to get the clearances that you need to get to operate at the levels that you're operating at in the places I've been or other special forces people. Like you have to be of a sound mind. And so, yeah, I've heard a lot of things, man, just from all over the place. And I think the inner Earth is something that is real, but I personally don't have proof.
Yeah. Well, when you hear reports of living theropods in Texas due to fracking, it seems to me that they are actually coming up from lower regions for their dwelling place. You would think, hey, look, okay, for the audience sake, theropod is a carnivore that walks on two legs. Okay. So this could be implying that we're dealing with the Tyrannosaurids living T-Rexes in Texas.
Oh, wow.
I've heard this one over and over again. There's something to it, I think. But I would personally believe that they're actually coming up from underground. And that's pretty hard to believe.
Well, there's
something
underground tunnel cities.
Yeah. If we're
there's a lot of that.
Yeah. And if it's part of the hollow earth, they're going where it's warmer. They're coming up at certain times to feed. A lot of people say, well, as a believer, Jake, are you sure you support the hollow earth there? I think there's something to the hollow earth. I really do. I'm not someone who believes in time travel, though. That is reserved for the creator. Only he can transport something through time. However, if you're dealing with portals around the earth, we know for a fact there are portals. So these animals, especially pterosaurs, could be going through these areas. They could be in California, and one moment they're in Texas. Okay? I do support that. I do think there's truth to that. I don't think it's time travel. They're not coming from millions of years into our state of where we are in time.
Yeah. I think they've been here, and I think they didn't die out.
Yeah.
I don't think they actually died out in some giant, meteor.
No.
I'm not saying no meteor ever hit, but I'm saying like these things are still here and there are remnants left over, and they're either in the inner Earth or they're in these tunnel systems. I mean, there's tunnel systems that go all over the entire planet.
Yeah.
From ancient civilizations and stuff like that. Again, everyone's like, oh man, he's like spilling the beans, whistleblowing because he's a SEAL. It's like, dude, look this up on YouTube, look it up on Instagram, look up search, and you can look up like 1,000 videos and you can cross-reference it for yourself. You can go on the government website, USA. whatever, and look it up. I mean, there's 100 years of declassified documents on there. So there's millions and millions, tens of millions, possibly 1 billion pages of things to sift through. But if you're going to sit there and read the Epstein list because it's interesting, then you can probably find something about dinosaurs.
Oh, I'm sure.
It just takes time to look it up, you know?
Yeah, I'll go one step further and say that the asteroid did not happen. Sorry. Yeah, instead, I believe there was a huge catastrophe called a global flood, and that a lot of these creatures were brought back on the Ark as infants because they're far more manageable. If you ever go to the Ark Encounter in Kentucky,
I've heard about that place. I haven't gone yet. They have dinosaurs on the ship, right?
Yeah, they do. They do. They even have pterosaurs. And
yeah,
Dr. Ken Ham's
like
amazing.
the craziest thing, and I'm like, bro, like, dude, read the book, man. It's in the book.
Yeah,
the Bible. Yeah, and it's just like, of course they're going to hide all the archaeological proof and evidence. You know what I mean? Because who owns the media? You know, the bad guys. You know, wink, wink, whatever you want to say. But it's just so they're going to cut out the actual truth of the archaeological evidence that proves all the biblical stuff is true.
Well, they don't want to submit to the one true God. Unfortunately, that's
because once a human being meets the true God, that human being is not going to bow to anything else.
Right. They want to be submissive to all these other ideas, this ideology. Now, having served in the military, do you believe certain branches of government or powerful groups already know about this phenomena, but keep silent? What's your thoughts on that, Brian?
Yeah, my thoughts on that, merely an opinion, but I think that the world government is aware of all this stuff. And I think that they're, telling a history that benefits the people in charge, just like they did with, the blacks, whites, and natives all being over here before colonialism. Like, we all know that. I mean, I live out here in LA, and the other day I was like, hey, can I ask you a question? And I went up to an African-American person, and because we're neighbors, and he's like, yeah, what's up? And I was like, do you know that black people were here before colonialism, right? He's like, oh, yeah, we know that, but no one listens to us. And I was like, no one listens to us either. I'm native. What's up, bro? And it's like, we knew the whole time, and there was, like I said, there was already white people over here too. So this whole narrative about like, oh, hey, the evil Christian white man came over and destroyed these poor cultures. It's like, bro, like, enough. Yeah. People are waking up.
Yeah, they are. Slowly but surely, right?
Yeah.
Let's come back here for a moment. I know you're curious by this phenomena, and it doesn't just tie into pterosaurs. There's other things too. We talked about, this field tends to get more visibility when it's dealing with the Sasquatch or the Bigfoot or the Yeti, the skunk ape. I understand that. There's so many researchers devoted to that type of creature. But there's other things out here in this world too that defy logic, such as a living, breathing werewolf, which we refer to as the dog man. There are reptiloids, lizard men that have been seen as well. Mm-hmm. Anything that seems to be part man, part animal, anatomically incorrect, but it's there. I think borderline is a super soldier or genetic experimentation, or just maybe quite possibly the supernatural. You touched on something about the Sasquatch that others have talked about too. It tends to be more here one minute, gone the next. And that's why we're not getting very good, solid evidence. I mean, we got prints, we got tracks, characteristics of these creatures. Being Navajo, can you enlighten me a little bit more? Do you happen to know anything about these other types before I jump back into pterosaur?
Oh, yeah, totally. Okay, so on our reservation, again, 2018, I think, and by Window Rock, which is our capital for the Navajo Nation, someone saw a Bigfoot. And the whole reservation was like, it's back, the Bigfoots are back, but it disappeared. And so the way we view them is we view them as they're interdimensional. They're forest demons is what we call them.
Okay.
And they have the ability to kind of shift and phase in and out of other dimensional space. But then there's supposed to be two types. There's one that actually has the ability to shift through the dimensional space. And that's why they can appear and disappear so quickly. And that's why you always get that funky smell. Like I said, death has a smell, a very specific smell, the spirit of death. You can smell it on people. You know what it is. It's not BO. It's bleeding out from the spirit realm down to the third dimensional plane. But then there's also the type of Bigfoot that doesn't phase, and it's like permanently here in the physical world, and it lives and hides where it lives and hides, potentially underground or whatever. But there's a lot of things in, like I said, Vietnam. My real father, my biological father, didn't serve the military, but he was Christian. And then my stepfather, because my mother remarried, he was a POW in Vietnam. He was a helicopter pilot for the Marine Corps, and he got shot down. It was a POW for 18 months, and then he escaped one night, and literally 3 months crawling on his belly through the mud at night, made it back to Blue Lines, became a stepdad. And he was saying that people, and he was hearing stories when he was in Vietnam of like GIs going in and other pilots saying like, yeah, there's just like these big Bigfoot ape looking things on top of the trees when we were landing, but it wasn't an orangutan. It wasn't, they were like, it looked like a Sasquatch. Yeah. And it's like, well, and you know, and then you're like, oh, it's just a Gigantopithecus that's like left over because the jungle's so dense.
I've heard that.
And then I'm like, well, at the same time, it's just like we're hearing stories about that kind of stuff on my reservation as well. And then you get the Yeti, and you got them from all these other places. So, I mean, it's a lot of mystery, but the one that we most commonly refer to and understand on the Navajo reservation is the Bigfoot that can phase in and out of dimensions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting that they know about that, the phasing out, in and out.
Well, because the medicine man, they can do a lot of, it's like movie level magic, but it's real. Like I've seen people do like ridiculous things on the reservation that you would think that like there's no way this guy's is like levitating. I mean, you see it in a movie, I've seen it.
Yeah.
What's
your personal opinion then of the Sasquatch phenomena? Do you think that you believe they are interdimensional?
Oh yeah, well, they say there's two different types. That's what I believe.
Okay.
I believe that there is one that has the ability to be interdimensionally, like shift through the veil and disappear and appear at will where it needs to. And then I think that there's one that's permanently here. I think there's two different types, and I do believe in them.
Okay.
I do believe they're here. They're real.
Oh, definitely.
As well as the petrosaurs. I think all these things are real. They're just hidden.
Yeah.
They're hidden because they need them to be hidden.
I think my thought process on the bipedal beings, whether it be Sasquatch or Dogman, you name it.
Yeah.
I think it's all just a trickery, unfortunately. It's tampering with God's creation. Anything that is part man, part beast is a violation of his law.
I agree. I think it's left over from the angels going into the human women and having the children. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I think that we're left over from that.
And it's, we talk about maybe when I think of L.A. Marzulli and these other ones too, who talk about the Greys and the aliens needing the suit to wear in order to interact, because
the androids are the Greys.
Yeah.
They house the disembodied spirits of the demons because they need something to physically act in, and then the Talls, those are actually like fallen angels.
I agree. So I wonder then, why part man, part beast? What is the point? And that's why I come back to Super Soldier. Is this tied into Revelations? Is this tied in the end times? Hunters that would seek out the ones who call themselves Christians? Just a theory. I'm totally wrong. Might be wrong.
Oh yeah, we're just spitballing here. These are good, really good insights. No one's ever asked me that question, but I do believe that end times will be in this century.
Yeah,
I mean everything's lined up.
We're experiencing some of it, aren't we?
I mean we're starting.
Yeah,
I do believe we're getting towards the end of things here, legitimately, or at least the end of the era. You know, that's what the Bible says. Like the story of God from beginning to end of the age.
Yeah.
You know, if you know who God is and you're willing to submit to Him, and I promise it's the best thing you'll ever do, you don't got to worry about all that stuff.
True.
You know, but if you're unsure, I would suggest anyone just, take a minute to humble yourself. I had to do it. It was hard. But it's your eternal soul. Like this is the blink of an eye in an eternal lifespan, this life. That's the truth. Native Americans know that as well. Even on our own theological understanding of our own culture, like it's important. Because I do believe that we're getting towards the end of it. All the science is there.
Yeah.
All the technology is there. The technology that, we don't know about, it's there.
Well, I would think the most important question to ask of everybody, too, is I think most of us can realize that we're going to die, aren't we?
Yeah.
So if you're
Your
going to
physical body
die,
will die.
what happens then? Every human being is going to die. So what will happen to you then? Where will you come to that understanding of who you served will be?
Yes.
If I was you, for everybody who's watching and listening, make sure you choose wisely, because life is over in an instant. It's a breath, and then it's gone. So when you think about men and women who have served, fought for your freedom, honor that. It's important. They fought for your freedom. So honor them by living a fulfilled life and acknowledging your creator. Because if they can do it, you should do it too. We're coming to the end here, Brian, but I have a few more questions for you, okay?
Of course. Thank you.
Okay. After all you've lived, from combat to cinema to the unseen, what truths have you found bridging science, spirit, and experience?
Yeah. It's a good question.
It's challenging.
There is a creator of everything. That creator is benevolent. And that creator loves you, and he wants to be an intimate part of your life because you are a child of that creator. And out of all my experience of the supernatural, Ivy League astrophysics, Hollywood, being around secret society people and everything else that you get involved with when you're in show business, or you're around in show business and then working as a SEAL during wartime at a really high level, going to all the secret bases, doing all the secret stuff. Every single thing points back to the one answer that I was saying earlier. Every rabbit hole leads to the same answer, that Jesus is the answer. Like, Jesus is God in a human form. The spirit of God the Father is inside the vessel of the third dimensional being that is Jesus. So Jesus is God in human form. Every single answer I've ever looked at, and I was such an atheist. I was so angry and so bitter. I've had so many knockdown, drag out, chewing, cussing at Jesus in my room, mad at stuff. Ask the demon for help instead of Jesus for help because I was so mad. And I was like, oh, yeah, F you. I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to go ask your enemy because he'll help me because you won't do nothing for me. After I've been through all of it. I was an atheist, everything. I'm telling you right now, Jesus is the answer.
Wow. That means a lot
Yeah.
coming from you. Yeah.
Well,
You've been there.
It's the truth. I can't
Being
say
an
anything
atheist
but
actually helps others who are atheists to understand why they should choose Jesus as their savior.
Yeah. I mean, if you're an atheist, it's like, oh, well, there's no way. I believe in science. It's like, okay, well, here's the odds. The odds of Jesus not being who he says it is 1 times 10 to the 157th power. So 9 zeros is a billion. There's still another 148 zeros after that saying that Jesus isn't the guy. So if I had a gun and I put it to your head right now and I said, we're going to flip this coin because I'm Mr. Harvey Two-Face from Batman, you're going to take that odds? That's a 1 in 1 odd to 50%, You get one chance this way or one chance that way. And you're nervous to do the gun game? Now there's 1 times 10 to the 157th power against this, and you're still going to say no? It's like, dude, you're not an atheist. You're just mad at God, like I was. All the proof's there. Logically, mathematically, spiritually, it's all there. Look at the rabbit holes. Do your own research. It all leads to the same answer.
Well said. I like that. So, what legacy do you want to leave for both your Navajo people and the broader world?
I always have like a little bit of aversion to the word legacy, just because the reality that we live in is a lie. And, it just sounds like ego to me. it's like the legacy is like, I want to be remembered for something. And it's just like, well, it's not about me. Like, if people would understand the biggest lesson in this life is it's not about you, that's, that's more of an important legacy than trying to like be somebody. Like, I used to curse a lot. I used to swear like a sailor. And I realized, like, why am I doing that? Oh, I'm putting this word here in this sentence because it's funny. Or I'm trying to like sound cool, or I'm trying to like sound tough. And I was like, you're only trying to make this, you're trying to like put a mask on or be somebody to entertain a group of people around you, rather than just letting the light that you are and the person that God made you to be to shine through. So clean up your language and stop trying to play a part. Just be who you are. I think that's more of an important legacy than me trying to like specifically leave something to be remembered by.
Sure. Well, I think maybe it's used a little loosely here, but I think when I think of for myself, I hear the word legacy. I think of what I said to others and how it's impacted them for the better. You're right. It's not about us. We're just kind of the outlet,
We're like ants
not
down
him.
here, man. Take it easy.
Yeah.
It's like, you're just one of the ants down here. Doesn't matter. Take it easy.
Yeah, we're just the vessels here. We're doing what we're called to do. And if there's some excitement there, there's exploration there that comes with it, I welcome it. But it's not about me. When people come on this show, it's about my guests because I want to hear from them. It's not about Jacob. It's about them. It's about Brian because I want to hear from these individuals. So when I leave something that has changed someone's life to seek the truth, to understand it, to surrender to the one true God, I've done my job.
Yeah.
Then we all did our job, right?
There we go. That was beautiful. Thanks.
Yeah. Finally, when the world looks back at Brian William Price, how would you like to be remembered? As a soldier, an actor, or a seer? But maybe the messenger. Maybe the messenger itself.
Big question.
Yeah.
The first word that comes to mind is servant. I've tried to spend my whole life in service because I genuinely love people. And some people are harder to love than others. And I failed miserably at doing that.
Yeah.
More times than I'd like to admit. But it's servant. I love people, man.
I like that. That's rare.
Yeah.
I think that as we grow and progress, we get stronger and we realize what we're really here for. Not ourselves necessarily. It's about others, about your brother. This is why I think I love to aspire to those who have served their time, because it's not about them. It's the overall picture. The ones who guard the gates of freedom. That's important to me. Yeah. Servant. Is that such a bad thing? No, not at all. What do you think the apostles were? They were servants. They followed the word and went forth proclaiming liberty to all who would listen. And then for those who did listen, it was embedded in their mind. They're like, you know what? I'm going to do that too. We're all called for a purpose. Make sure to utilize that purpose to the best of our ability. I'm going to throw this last question in here, Brian. I've always forget to ask this of every soldier. And maybe this is kind of a little too touchy, but I'm just kind of curious. When you go out hunting and you make your first kill, I've always been told that's hard, especially for me because I'm an animal lover. And I finally went on a bison hunt, and that was interesting. I wasn't the one who shot or made that last fire from that gun, but I saw it. And as someone who studies animals and loves animals, you see the animal go down, and you're like, wow, that was painful, but there was a purpose behind it because it fed families. That the animal gave up of itself for you. And I see where there's a connection there with the tribal nations when they say, thank you, brother, for your sacrifice provides for us. When you're in the battlefield as a soldier, and you open fire on that person, what's that like? How difficult is it when you take your first shot and you realize you just brought a man down? Are you comfortable talking about that real fast?
Yeah. Well, we're around a lot of death in the war, and it's hard to explain. It's heavy, but it's also lighter because they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that answers the question or not.
That's okay. I think maybe early on when you talked about those 10 years of coming back and struggling with PTSD, is that because that plays an effect there with what you had to do when you served?
Well, there's always there used to be a, I remember I was working through some guilt that I had.
Yeah.
And, there was a time when, this target was like women were allowed to read. And so he doused these girls in kerosene and lit them up on fire. And they were 6, 7, 8 because they wanted to read. And so it's just we as a team went out and did the mission and we got the guy. And so it's just look, they can read now in that village. But then it's also, you have to be the one to cleave someone down. And so it's it's an honorable position and you're trying to do it for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, it's yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. And
Well,
like I said, it's hard. It's heavy because there's death.
Yeah.
You can feel there's a void there because they're gone.
And I apologize if that's too much of a touchy question to ask, but
Oh yeah, if I didn't want to answer, I would just say no. And I was no one's ever really asked me that question outside therapy before. So yeah.
Well, there's a
Yeah.
journalist in me everywhere I go. So
Yeah, yeah.
and you've been through a lot. And but I
that's
just
how the Lord's used me.
yeah. I mean,
You're like, oh, I didn't serve. It's dude, you're serving in this capacity. How many people watch this show? I mean, you're reaching more people than we did when we killed some guy in a mountain 10 years ago.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad to be where I am, and I'm glad to be able to have you on the show to share all this amazing information with me and my audience.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a blessing.
Fun. Yeah.
We could easily go longer, but I think we're good, and I think the audience is going to really, really enjoy it. I'm here anytime you want to reach out. If you even see something, let me know.
Cool.
And anytime you're interested in this pterosaur phenomena, keep an eye on this network. We're the ones who go after this phenomena more than anybody. It's our forte.
Totally. Yeah, I learned a lot about it. I had no idea that there were this. Yeah, I learned so much here.
But if there's more you want to know, there's still more I can go into.
Guys, yeah, it's amazing. So thank you guys so much. Hey, production crew, I can't see it, but thank you guys.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Hunter. Appreciate you. And Jessica, too. And Tim Archuka. It's been a pleasure.
Yes,
all right, Brian, I've taken a lot of your time. I know we went a lot longer, but this, like I said, this was part 2 as well. So I think you'll enjoy what we have to show you. And keep up the great work. You're a blessing in your field. Anytime you want to reach out to me, I'll always be here, especially if you have more to share with me and I have more to share with you. You have a great rest of your weekend, sir.
You too. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
As we bring this discussion to a close, it's worth reflecting on significance of what has been shared here tonight. A conversation with Brian Price offers something that is often missing in modern discourse. Not just speculation, but inherited knowledge. What he described passed down through his grandmother, rooted in the traditions of his people, speaks to a long-standing awareness of something far larger than ourselves. Accounts of massive winged beings capable of lifting individuals are not isolated stories. I never believed they were. They are, however, a part of a broader cultural memory, one that deserves careful attention, not dismissal. What makes this particularly compelling to me is the intersection between tradition and observation. Now, Brian articulated a distinction that is both subtle and profound. that what we refer to as Thunderbirds may not fit neatly within the boundaries of conventional ornithology. They are not simply birds, folks, and yet they're not entirely separate from what we understand as avian life either. Instead, what emerges is possibility, that these beings may represent a form of life that shares characteristics of both 1. Avian structure, 2. and reptilian ancestry. A convergence rather than contradiction. So this raises an important question. Are we dealing with symbolic representations, misidentified biological forms, or something that exists just beyond the limit of current classification? We may not have definitive answers, but what we do have is testimony. And testimony, when preserved, respected, and examined carefully, becomes a foundation for deeper inquiry. So my final evaluation is this. What Brian Price has shared is not something to be taken lightly. It is not entertainment. It is not fabrication. It is a perspective shaped by experience, culture, and continuity, and continuity. And in a field where so much is uncertain, that kind of grounded insight is invaluable. Brian, thank you for your time, for your openness, for your service to your people and to your country, and for trusting us and our audience with this information and these accounts. And to all of you listening, I hope you found this discussion not only engaging, but thought-provoking. I know I did. Oh, yes. Because at the end of the day, this is not just about what we believe. It's about what we are willing to explore with discipline, with respect, and with open mind. Thank you so much for joining us. Seek the truth. Keep your eyes on the sky. May God bless every one of you on the other side listening to this program. I'm your host, Jacob Esguerra, journalist, investigator, explorer, and Christian cryptozoologist. We'll see you next time on the Ropen Radio Network.